All right, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners to order, and happy Thanksgiving. Also thank you for allowing the delay. We were at the Adoption Day ceremony across the parking lot at the Family Justice Center and needed a few extra minutes to get back, and it was really a wonderful event. Okay, so as we get started, we have Pastor Corey here to lead the invocation. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm Corey Naderveld from Hillcrest CRC in Hudsonville, Michigan. So let's go to God in prayer. Heavenly Father, God, we come here at the onset of this meeting and we take a moment to stop before work begins and we pause and we acknowledge you. God, we thank you for being our creator, sustainer, and the one who redeems us through the work of Jesus Christ, in whom we have union through the power of the Holy Spirit. And God, as we think about adoption this morning, we think of that beautiful picture and that reminder that we are adopted as sons and daughters and co-heirs with Christ. Lord, we praise you and thank you for being a God who is high and lifted up and can speak a universe into creation just simply by the power of your word, but also for being a God who is near and close to the brokenhearted, a God who knows us so well in every hair on our heads. And as we reflect on who you are, we can't help but to join our hearts with the psalmist who says, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures forever." And so on this Thanksgiving week, and as we should do each and every day, we do just that. We thank you for your sovereign and faithful hand at work in the world, in our churches, in this county, and in our lives as well. You are indeed good, and your steadfast love endures forever. And God, you never waver, even when we do. Lord, we also pause before our work begins this morning because we ask for your guidance and your leading. We know that you are Lord over every square inch, that the work that happens today is not just something that is isolated and earthly, but an opportunity to bring you glory and an opportunity to acknowledge your sovereign rule and reign over all of creation in every area that you give us stewardship over. And so I pray for those who engage in the work of Ottawa County, for the commissioners, for the staff, and for all those that they represent. I pray that you would give them the desires and the means and bring them to the ends which are consistent with your will and which glorify you. Lord, would you guard their hearts and minds? Would you protect their families? And would you give them focus, diligence, and great wisdom in their work, both today and always? And God, would you bless the people of Ottawa County? Those in our county maybe that are struggling, give them resolutions and peace. And would you continue to work your good, holy, and pleasing will in our lives? We pray this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. All right, thank you. Will we please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Cosby. Mr. Kleins. Mr. Zylstra.
Here.
Mr. Bonema.
Here.
Mr. Moss.
Here.
Mrs. Wenzel.
Here.
Mrs. Curran.
Here.
Mrs. Rohde.
Here.
Mr. Belknap.
Here.
Bergman. And Mrs. Miedema. Chair, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Commissioner Zylstra, could you just mention your current location?
Sure. Puebla, Mexico.
Great. Thank you. Okay, moving forward, we do not have any correspondence today. So up next is public comment. Is there anyone, or do we have a list, Mr. Clerk?
We only have one registered public comment, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, and that is John Teeples, Georgetown Township.
Great, welcome.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, yesterday you publicly blamed me for intimidating Lauer into withdrawing his candidacy for our next county administrator and said that I had acted unethically. I find it interesting that throughout my almost 40-year career as a lawyer and public servant, no one has ever called me a liar or unethical until I decided to run for office. Then it's by people like yourselves who do not know me, have never worked with me, and who jump to conclusions without facts. Let me set the record straight. I never reached out to nor called Jim Lauer and had no intentions of ever doing so. In fact, he called me last Friday night around 8:30 p.m. as part of his due diligence into whether to accept the job if offered. I never asked anyone to talk with him and did not direct him to anyone else. He essentially wanted to know if his job was secure once the new commission was sworn into office in January. I told him that I could not speak for the other commissioner-elects, but that I personally did not feel it would be fair to him or to his family to fire him simply because he had accepted the job under these circumstances, and that I certainly did not and would not hold it against him for doing so. I also expressed my belief that the other commissioner-elects would likewise treat him fairly because I told him they are good people. However, I also told him that I would expect that there would be a new recruitment and search committee forming next May or so, with community participation like that which existed when John Shea was identified and hired in 2022. Mr. Lauer knew that, as a matter of law, the best this board could offer him is a job for a maximum of 12 months, ending December 31, 2025. And that the county would otherwise expect to have a permanent administrator starting January 2026, if not sooner. Mr. Chairman, I told him exactly what I told you a week ago, that I believe it is important for the community to have another more transparent committee search process in order to build community trust in the new board through the process, wherein community members from throughout the county would actually participate in the selection for our next county administrator. I told him that my views had nothing to do with him personally, but that regardless of who was sitting in that 12-month interim administrator position, I would feel the same. He said that he was hoping that if he did a good job, that the new commission would not go through another search process for the next administrator. I told him that would not support that plan. for the
Thank you.
reasons stated. He wanted assurances I simply could not give.
Thank you.
I will finish this in the next public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Good morning, Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township. The Executive Talent Committee has 5 members. What are we to think of Ms. Cosby's absence from the Executive Talent Committee? Silent protest? Or is she done serving? For clarity, the Executive Talent Committee is 4 of 11. The full board is 11 of 11. It would be in the interest of all to seat the newly elected board and at that time conduct the administrator hiring. At yesterday's meeting, it was stated members of the incoming board had made contact with Mr. Lauer. To be fair, the incoming board has a vested interest in the selection made and ultimately hired. That contact with Mr. Lauer was characterized as intimidation. Depending on the viewing lens, it could also be a courtesy call to spare someone from taking a job that in likelihood will result in additional drama. Of course, the Executive Talent Committee knew that and leveraged an additional $250,000 termination contingency to protect their choice. A monetary firewall should not be a construct of Ottawa impact to get their way. Try to live up to that where freedom rings and allow the new board the freedom to build a success-based team. The Executive Talent Committee can cast aspersions on the conduct of Teeples and Bonema. They are simply asserting a reality check.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Darlene Dykstra, Jennison, Precinct 3 in Ottawa County. Thank you for this opportunity to share my concern as both a resident and a precinct delegate of Ottawa County, as well as a tax-paying citizen. As such, I would like to express my extreme dismay at the announcement in the packet of this news that the incoming presumed leadership acted in an unethical manner. The gentleman before me, what I heard him say, if I'm not mistaken, just refuted what Mr. Teeples had said regarding who contacted whom. So based on that and the thing in the packet here, I just want to make it a public comment that it's sad to see or hear or read that unethical methods have been used to contact or to even discuss the fact that Mr. Lauer might not want this position. That would have been a decision that Mr. Lauer should make on his own. And I appreciate this opportunity to make this information a public comment so everybody can go back on record and see this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Paul Martineau, Park Township. Several of you noted yesterday that this has been the most transparent process ever for hiring a new administrator. And it seems that you didn't pause to think that this reflects rather poorly on the process that you used the first couple of times to hire a new administrator, and that you may have avoided this entire mess if you had been more transparent and followed due process 2 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? All right, seeing none, I'll move on to our next item, which is the approval of the agenda. Get a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I moved. Second.
A motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving today's agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carried. Next up, we have consent resolutions. Can I please get a motion to approve the consent resolutions, please?
Second.
A motion and support. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's see.
Do a voice vote, I think.
Yeah, let's go ahead and call the roll. Thank you.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey, Ilstra,
Cannot vote as he's not ill.
oh. Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinjans,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we are up to 8E or 8A, Contract for Emergency Solutions Grant. Suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the contract with Good Samaritan Ministries for the Emergency Solutions Grant. Okay. Was that a motion from Commissioner Curran? Is there support?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All right, do we have anyone here today to speak to this? Welcome. Morning.
Hear me okay? Hard to hear back there. Any questions, or do you just want an overview? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, could you do a quick overview and?
Yeah. So this is a grant, it's a pass-through grant from from MISTA, the Housing Development Authority. It comes to us, we get some admin dollars to put the application together, and then we pass the dollars through Good Samaritan and Community Action House, so that they can do, housing programs in the community. Good Sam does, some housing or homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing, and then Community Action House does, street outreach. And that's what the contract's for.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Commissioner Miedema.
I don't have one on this one, but I will have one on the next. I see it's similar. So
Yeah, there's-
just so that you know.
There, yeah, it comes from the same grant.
Yep.
just,
Yep.
Contracts with the subcontractor. Yep.
Okay. All right. Can we go to the clerk for a
Sure.
the roll?
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinjans.
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Yeah, motion passes.
All right. Up next is 8B, Contract for Emergency Solutions Grant, number 2. The suggested motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the contract with Community Action House for the Emergency Solutions Grant.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any questions on this one?
I do.
Right.
I just have to get to my page. Jennifer, would you be willing to just, I was reading on the summary page from this one, and I just have a question, if you could maybe elaborate a little bit of what the street outreach that Community Action House would be doing with the essential services and case management. Is it pretty similar to the first one? Or it seemed it was described a little differently, and I just wanted to know the work
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much detail I could speak on exactly what they do, but they're going out into the community, doing that street outreach, with the intent of, getting people connected with various services in the housing realm.
Right.
Yeah, so it's 2 different categories that MISTA defines.
Thank you.
Question.
Commissioner Bonema.
As you're asking these questions and doing these interviews, are you able to identify whether or not they are a veteran or not?
So we don't actually do it. So the grant is, we pass it through to our great partners that do the work. So Community Action House, I know the name's confusing, but we pass those dollars through so they can do the work. We just do the back end admin. So we do invoice review and just make sure all of their charges are appropriate.
Would you by chance know the answer to the question on their behalf?
I do not know the
Okay.
specifics. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I would.
But they do
imagine that is
register people when they go out and meet with them to reconnect with them at a later date, potentially for services?
Possibly, but I don't know all of the
Okay.
ins and outs. We just see the back end with the billing and those pieces. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I could
Not a
find out
problem.
for you though.
Love to know that.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
I have one other question. Not sure you'll know it offhand, but I'm curious. Do you know if there's been any changes in the location that people who are served are coming from? Are they from Ottawa County, from Kent County, from Flint, from other locations?
I wish I knew the answer to that. Yeah. We don't see a lot of that information because of confidentiality.
Okay,
So we're just seeing the invoices or the rent that's being paid, but not specifically like where the individual's coming from.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Confidentiality, they can't share it with us, but I can find out and let you know.
Yep,
So
great.
location, where they're coming from.
I've heard some discussion that there's been an increase in people coming from outside Ottawa County to Ottawa County and to especially the Holland area, essentially looking for handouts, looking for government assistance, and that there's been a lot in Ottawa County. And I've heard that there's one of the common phrases that's out there is, Ottawa County is kind of, figured out how to do this or something. And so people are coming from Kent and other areas, Kalamazoo, up to Ottawa County. So I'm just curious about what's being seen.
Could find that out.
Okay, any other questions? Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the clerk.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinjans.
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran, Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Next up is 8C, the Crockery Township 2024 Water System Improvements Bond Issue. The suggested motion is to approve the resolution authorizing the sale of the Crockery Township Water Supply 2024 Water System Improvement Bonds. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved?
Support.
Okay, motion and support. We have anyone here today to address? Welcome, Pat.
Morning.
Morning.
And first, I want to apologize for this being back in front of the board. I made a minor error at the last meeting. I failed to notify the clerk and have the required notice published. So apparently I'm not the only one that's had this error. There was a simple solution to re-ratify the full pledge and credit and post the notice as required.
No problem. Thank you. Any questions, or we'll go to the clerk? Okay.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinjans.
Yes.
And Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. All right. Next up, we have item 8D, the 2024 Wyoming Water System Improvements Bond Issue. The suggested motion is to approve the resolution authorizing the sale of the Wyoming Water System 2024 Water System Improvement Bond Issue.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and support. Take it away.
Thank you. Before I get into the resolution, I did want to follow up on just a few items that we talked about at the last meeting. Appreciate Commissioner Bonema pointing out the treasurer. I did contact her and make sure that she's in the loop, and so thank you for that. I did check with City of Wyoming on their credit rating, and they're a AA minus. So Ottawa County is at the top notch, and so they're at like fourth notch, difference of 3. So from a practical standpoint, that's about 0.2% difference based on what our finance advisor suggested. However, they went out to market here not too long ago, and they had great interest rate at 4.19% for their share of this project. So that kind of shows you that it depends on the market and who the buyer is, and so they kind of hit it out of the park with that one. But going forward, if they were to finance our share of it, it'd likely be a revenue bond, which would require more financing. The last thing was the credit rating of the county as a whole. The total credit rating for the county is based on 10% of the SEV. And so we have a 2.39 billion credit rating right now. We have about 143 million in outstanding debt right now. So that leaves about 2.25 billion remaining. Of that, 5% can be funded under this capital improvement bond. So that's a 1.2. And so that's what I'm asking us to proceed with, would be about 34.8 million out of that particular limit. So on to the resolution at hand. I'm asking for your approval on the project. I could restate the project if that would be helpful. The improvements shall consist of the first phase of a multi-phase project to extend the third transmission main from the City of Wyoming Donald K. Shine Water Treatment Plant to the Gazan Pumping Station, and shall include without limitation the construction of the transmission main piping and valves from the water treatment plant to approximately 9 miles east, as well as the installation of the surge suppression system at said water treatment plant, as well as all work necessary and incidental to these improvements, including without limitation the restoration of property, streets, rights of way, and easements affected by the So the other thing that we're asking for is approval in the intent to issue general obligation bonds not to exceed $37.6 million. Authorize the clerk to publish the notice of intent in the paper. And the last thing is we will come in probably January with a subsequent resolution that will have all the details of bonds. That I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Bell?
The only comment I have is however many valves they've ordered as part of this, add 2 more.
The last thing I did want to share is I do have another contract that is with the local units, and I'm pleased to say that we're very close. I was hoping we'd be there today. We have one person to check in on, and then we'll be done with that process and go forward with local improvement.
Can you speak to some of the feedback from the local units?
Just some minor tweaks here and there on tightening up some of the language.
Just overall as well.
This agreement really deals with county's authority to set the rates. So it dealt more with notification on when those rate changes may take place, their ability to more communication type issues. So generally it was well received, and we're very close to having legal sign off on all
those. Commissioner Rhodey?
I just do have one comment. Very, very thankful for the project and thankful for the AAA bond rating that our county has and how that's able to help really countywide with different projects. Just want to make note again that it is a AAA bond rating, as that seems to have been confusing to a number of people in our community who perhaps only read the newspaper or social media. But we are, in a very good, solid, strong position with that. And, it's been quite a benefit to our whole county. So thank you for working with that too.
Commissioner Bonema?
And I'll echo those same sentiments. Very grateful for this project and the work that's gone into it. I know that coordinating all the different relationships along the way to bring this water line into existence is quite a feat. And, one of the main roles of a county board is to provide public safety and infrastructure. And this infrastructure is water, and water is core to all life and growth. And so this is a big thing for Ottawa County and also Wyoming, of course. So I'm grateful that this is happening now. It's a great need.
Yeah, this will have a big impact on local units, especially over the long term. This is part of that 20-year planning, if you will, for, core government services. So thank you, Pat. And if there's nothing else, we'll go to the clerk.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap, Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Kleinjans,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you. We're up to 8E, item to amend a previous motion regarding OCCAA advisory board terms. Suggested motion is a little long. I'm going to read the whole thing. To amend the appointment of Esther Fifelsky to the Ottawa County Community Action Agency Advisory Board for a 3-year term from March 26, 2024 to March 26, 2027, rather than from January 1, 2024 to December 31, 2024, in order to comply with the bylaws and policy of the aforementioned advisory board, and to amend the appointment of Kenneth Stiles to the Ottawa County Community Action Agency Advisory Board for a 3-year term from May 15, 2024 to May 15, 2027, rather than from May 15, 2024 to December 31 of 2024, in order to comply with the bylaws and policies of the aforementioned advisory board. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Right, we have a motion and support. And Jennifer, did you want to speak to this at all, or it's fairly self-explanatory, but any comments are welcome.
Yes. So Commissioner Miedema and I have been emailing back and forth. So this was missed. I take full responsibility for that in the way that it was written, when it was voted in. So we created policy about a year or so ago, and it changed our terms to staggered 3-year terms, because we were noticing there were chunks of advisory board members. We would lose, 4 at the end of a calendar year and have to fill those spots. And they're not easy seats to fill. So we changed the policy so that once the board member is seated, they have 3 years from the time they're seated. So it'll help with keeping those seats full so we can be in compliance. So we're just making sure it reflects our policy.
Thank you. Commissioner Miedema?
I would just add great communication between Jennifer and legal counsel, and appreciate the conversations on it. So thanks.
Great. Okay, any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carried. Thank you. All right, next up, let's see, we have item F, another longer motion to amend a previous motion regarding LRE board terms. So I'm going to read this one as well and then look for a motion. To amend the appointment of Dave Parnan to the Lakeshore Regional Entity Substance Abuse Oversight Policy Board for a 3-year term from January 1, 2024 to December 31, 2026, rather than from January 1, 2024 to December 31, 2025, in order to comply with the bylaws and policy of the aforementioned board, and to amend the appointment of Richard Canton to the Lakeshore Regional Entity Substance Abuse Oversight Policy Board for a 3-year term from January 1, 2024 to December 31, 2026, rather than from January 1, 2024 to December 31, 2025, in order to comply with the bylaws and policy of the aforementioned board.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and support. Any additional discussion on this? Also fairly straightforward. Okay, all right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carried. All right, next up, item G. The suggested motion is to approve the contract amendment for the annual renewal and upgrade of the Blumira service for advanced to SEAM Plus edition with people-driven technology for year 2 of the 3-year contract and authorize the appropriate officials to execute the agreement.
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and support. And do we have someone here to speak to this one today? Welcome.
Basically, it's our second year of the contract. They're deprecating their current platform, so we had to move to a platform that allows agents, the agent-based. We are dropping our Cisco secure endpoint solution, which has some overlap. So it's basically a net increase of our budget to $1,855.50.
All right, great. Are there any questions on this one? Anybody want a reminder of what a SEAM is?
Security incident and event management.
Very smart tool. Okay, if there's no questions, thank you very much. And then let's go to the clerk for a vote on this one.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kleinjans.
Yes.
Mrs. Miedema.
Yes.
Mrs. Curran.
Yes.
Mrs. Brody.
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel.
Yes.
Mr. Belknap.
Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes.
And Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, great, thank you. We do not have any committee reports, so that brings us up to public comment. Is there anyone else or anyone who would like to address the board? And do we have anyone online?
Don't believe we do, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Well, we do have one.
I never did anything to contact Mr. Lauer, but that he had called me for employment assurances that I simply could not give. We never discussed his credentials or qualifications, and he never asked me, and I did not offer any opinion as to whether or not he should accept the job under the circumstances. But I did recognize him for being aware of and raising a red flag of uncertainty for his considerations. Mr. Chair, you blame me and others for you no longer having a candidate for county administrator. But we are not to blame, you are. In your rush to identify and hire someone and with just days left during your lame duck period, your decision placed your candidates, like Mr. Lauer, in an unfair and uncertain predicament. Put the new board in an unfair position and treated the community unfairly too. In recent days and weeks, many of us have asked you and others on the executive search committee several times to hold off from this hiring process to move your last 4 candidates into the new search process with a new board, which will include 4 of you. But for whatever reason, our outreach for collaboration has been rejected and dismissed. Now you are talking about collaboration and want good relations with the new board. Good. So do I. When we last talked, I cautioned you to be more mindful of your physical mannerisms and choice of words. Here again, I'm owed a public apology. I'm not a politician, but I am a public servant. Ask anyone who knows me. And I hope that someday you will come to know me as an absolutely honest and ethical person, as I've always aspired to be. In the meantime, I pledge to work collaboratively with you in good faith, as you likewise suggest you too will do. But regardless of how you assess my motives, I will seek to lead our county with more compassion, understanding, and foresight than has been shown by this commission over the last 2 years. Thank you for your attention.
Could you please state your name and location for the record?
John Teeples, Commissioner-elect, Georgetown Township, District 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Mr. Chair, we do have an online public comment, I believe. I apologize, because Commissioner Cosby joined us at 11:10 remotely, and she had her hand raised. But Commissioner, did you? Perhaps not. Sorry.
Okay. Commissioner Cosby, did you have any public comment, or should we continue on? All right, she may just be listening for now. All right, we are up to additional business, number 11, administrator's report.
Not a lot to report. We're helping with the administrative search in that process, and we have a few other HR issues we're working through, a lot of end-of-the-year contracts. Nothing big to report. Paul Sachs in the Department of Strategic Impact is having his chili cook-off today, so I'm sure he would appreciate everyone stopping by and either voting for Paul or saying that you're voting for Paul. I've been told that he is the favorite to win, so.
He did win last year.
Thank you. That actually is a very important update. Thank you.
I don't know if the ballot image scanners are on for that one, but I hope.
I think we're encouraged to bring food items as well.
Oh, okay. And is that directly after this, or is that lunch?
11:30.
11:30.
11:30, okay. All right, 11:30 it is. All right, next up, the chairman's update. There's been some, discussion on the recent administrator search that has been going on for the last couple months. And so the plan for this administrator's update is just to share with the public, to be fully transparent, the same information that the committee reviewed, just to make sure that it is clear for everyone. And So Commissioner Medema is going to assist me with that. Okay. Ottawa County is a beautiful county with a bright future. We're cultivating a county where freedom rings, businesses flourish, and families thrive. The Ottawa County Board of Commissioners is given the statutory responsibility to appoint a county administrator to oversee county government. When we were elected, we committed to return Ottawa County to the priorities and the protection of the people after living under the unconstitutional local government overreach by Ottawa County in 2020 to 2022. Hiring an excellent county administrator is an important step in creating a beautiful future for Ottawa County and future generations. Earlier this year, we intentionally waited until after the August primary election to begin searching for a new permanent county administrator so that the county administrator candidates or applicants would know the makeup of the next board prior to applying for the position. On September 24, 2024, the Executive Transition Committee was appointed by the Board of Commissioners and tasked with searching for a full-time county administrator. With the successful recruitment help of W Talent Solutions, which included input from some of the key staff who interact with the county administrator on a daily basis, 19 resumes have been received, representing a tremendous pool of talent and experience. Thank you to each person who demonstrated a desire to serve in Ottawa County. All resumes are available to the public on the county website at miottawa.org. The Executive Transition Committee reviewed applicant resumes for evidence of strong leadership, depth of knowledge, relevant experience, education, and the ability to lead complex teams. Ottawa County is blessed to have outstanding individuals applying for the county administrator position. The committee voted on November 15 to move 4 applicants forward for public interviews. They were Christopher Estes, James Freed, Patrick Jordan, and Jim Lauer. Interviews took place on Tuesday, November 19. The interviews were live streamed and video recorded for the public. We invited all current county commissioners, constituents, staff, and recently elected county commissioners to watch the interviews and contact us to share their perspectives on which candidates they believed should, 1, move forward for a second round of interviews, and 2, which candidate should ultimately be presented to be the permanent county administrator. The committee reconvened last week, Thursday, November 21, to choose 2 final candidates to interview. James Freed and Jim Lauer both received unanimous votes from members of the Executive Transition Committee to proceed to final round interviews on Friday, November 22. Friday's meeting was canceled due to illness of the interim administrator and subcommittee board members. Both candidates demonstrated a great depth of knowledge and leadership experience in working with local government in the state of Michigan. On Thursday, November 21, James Freed withdrew from the candidate pool and sent a warm letter to the Board of Commissioners.
And here's the letter. Chairperson Moss and Board of Commissioners, I want to thank you for the distinct honor of being invited to interview for the position of County Administrator for the County of Ottawa. I was humbled to be informed this morning that I have been advanced in the process to the final stage. This process has ignited a great moment of personal reflection for my wife and I. In this moment, we stepped back to take stock in what our family currently has in life and our deepest hopes and desires for the future. I have been a municipal executive for more than 17 years. Almost 11 of those years were serving in my current position as city manager for the city of Port Huron. These 17 years have brought moments I could not foresee and will not forget. They have shaped who I am as a person and my worldview. My tenure in Port Huron has been marked by remarkable challenges and by a community working together to overcome those challenges. During this struggle, one of which our shared future was to be shaped, an irrevocable bond has been forged between the residents of Port Huron and my heart. Our hopes and dreams for our families and our future is now and forever interwoven and forged together by time and love. Here in Port Huron, we are home. This is where we want to raise our 2 little girls. No raise or promotion can change that fact. Furthermore, I believe that God has placed us here for such a time as this. Considering this, it would be unfair to your organization and your residents to continue in the process to become your next county administrator. Ottawa is one of Michigan's premier counties. It is why it's one of the fastest growing counties in Michigan, and why the search has yielded you such a deep pool of talent to choose from. During this period of our lives, I prayed that God would be a light unto our feet and give us straight paths. Today, I pray that same prayer for you and your organization. Sincerely, James R. Freed, City Manager, Chief Administrative Officer. James Freed has since called Jim Lauer and communicated his support for his candidacy and belief Ottawa County would be in good hands under his leadership. Jim Lauer is a standout candidate for the role of our next county administrator based on his merit and excellence in his field. Based on conversations we have had, there is much evidence that many people believe that both James Freed and Jim Lauer are qualified to be our next county administrator. We have chatted with incoming commissioners, current commissioners, and other elected officials, both within this county building and throughout the county. Many people have shared positive comments about both final candidates and stated that our process was transparent, detailed, and well done. Some of the incoming commissioners and current commissioners critiqued the process, mentioning that if we waited until next year, there would be a different pool of potential candidates. However, when asked to provide feedback on both James Freed and Jim Lauer, we didn't hear any negativity from any of them, except that Freed and Lauer were being considered by the current board. Here is some of the feedback we received from other elected officials within our county. Jim Lauer is a standout candidate for the role of our next county administrator based on his merit and excellence in his field. From observing the interview of Jim, he is qualified to do the job, has vast experience, leadership skills, will seek the board's vision, accept responsibility, values effective communication, understands and desires staff feedback, and builds administration based on building trust. From observing the interview process, Jim Lauer demonstrates vast experiences at multiple levels and positions in governmental units. Jim referenced having an organization chart, building trust, having an open door policy, teamwork and collaboration, obtaining feedback from the team, making himself accessible by going to staff, has a sense of humor, mentioned avoiding wasting time and money, driven to reflect that he wants to make a difference, an out-of-the-box thinker, not afraid to let people go who are having a negative impact on the team. Mr. Lauer certainly has a lot of experience on both sides of governing. I would think his experiences as an elected official give him a good perspective as to what it's like to be in your shoes. I also appreciate his efforts on behalf of landscape companies during COVID. Jim Lauer seems to be a more well-rounded candidate with experience in municipal government and experience in state legislature. Working for a smaller municipality still involves working with people, budgets, which allows for more outside-the-box solutions on budget problems. He seemed very personable and likable. If that's who you end up hiring, I am sure he will do a good job. I watched Mr. Lauer's first interview. I thought his answers were impressive. Jim stands out and is a good candidate. I would personally add that Jim desired for us to get to know him as a person as well. At the end of his interview, he went back to share more about his personal life. This demonstrated the relational aspect of Jim that he wanted to bring to Ottawa County. After James Freed withdrew his candidacy on Thursday of last week, Jim Lauer became publicly known as the final candidate to be considered for permanent county administrator. Jim Lauer shared with us that once this happened, he began receiving intimidating phone calls from John Teeples and Jacob Bonema. For perspective, we have been informed by incoming commissioners that John Teeples will likely be the chair and Commissioner Bonema may be vice chair of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners in 2025. In light of these events, Jim Lauer released the following statement this morning.
To whom it may concern, I was honored to be recruited by W Talent Solutions to apply for the Ottawa County Administrator position. From the beginning, the prospect of leaving my current position was a difficult one. However, I have always welcomed new challenges and sought opportunities to give back to the community. Given the challenges facing Ottawa County, I believed I was uniquely qualified to help bridge the political divide that has caused so much turmoil. Throughout this process, I have been encouraged by many individuals, both inside and outside the Ottawa County organization, to strongly consider taking on this role. Following a positive interview, I was selected as a top 2 candidate and soon became the sole candidate under consideration. It was at this point that members of the incoming board majority began reaching out to me both directly and indirectly to express that I would not be given a fair opportunity to succeed in this role. They explained that regardless of my qualifications or efforts, they were committed to terminating or otherwise forcing out whoever is hired. This would be the case even if it resulted in significant cost to taxpayers through severance payments, search fees, and renewed turmoil. While I was assured this was, quote, not personal, unquote, it would undoubtedly impact my family and career. At this moment, I believe it is time for someone to take an off-ramp. As such, I am withdrawing my name from consideration for this position. I do not wish to cost Ottawa County taxpayers additional money or be placed in a role set up for failure, thereby contributing further to division in the community. I wish the outgoing and incoming Board of Commissioners, the other elected officials, staff, and the people of Ottawa County all the best. I look forward to continuing my work with the Village of Sparta. We have exciting opportunities ahead, and I am grateful to remain part of this vibrant community. Sincerely, Jim Lauer, Village Manager, Village of Sparta. Yesterday, we were supposed to interview the final candidate in the search, but as we heard from Jim's statement, he has withdrawn, and as he explained to us, it was after being intimidated by John Teeples and Jacob Bonema. Not because he did not have the proper qualifications to be county administrator, but because he participated in a transparent and public search process by the current board. The current board is acting in the best interests of the county in the search for a permanent administrator. It is unfortunate to find someone that is supported by the community that feels he must withdraw due to the intimidation he's received. Jim has confirmed he would greatly like to serve in the position and to serve the people of Ottawa County. The treatment Jim and his family received was unfair, unethical, and unjust. This behavior is also creating a toxic environment for the transition between 2 boards. It should be noted that when the current board was elected in 2022, no meaningful transition process occurred, leading up to 8 out of 11 new commissioners being seated. This put the new board at a serious disadvantage in January of 2023 and harmed the people of Ottawa County. Unlike the prior and future board, this board is committed to working for the best interests of the people and a smooth transition plan. Unless something changes, it's unfortunate that the county now sits at a standstill for yet another 6 to 12 months before hiring a permanent administrator. It's also important to note that the current board has statutory authority to offer a 1-year contract for any administrator that we feel would best serve the citizens of Ottawa County.
Our county stands in need of a strong leader in the role of the permanent county administrator. We have been without a strong leader in this permanent role for the past couple of years. When I campaigned again this season, I was asked why we weren't moving forward yet with hiring someone. From my perspective, John Anderson was bringing about needed stability in his role as interim and during a busy budget season. Most importantly, I wanted future applicants to know who the county commissioners would be in 2025. I have shared for months with constituents that my hope was to begin interviews once the August elections were done, and that is what we did. beginning preliminary groundwork this past summer. I had shared that if the hiring process was delayed further, that would mean quite a few more months or possibly another year with no administrator. By taking the time to go through this process now, I was hopeful that we could dig into the real work of the county as we began afresh with a new county board makeup next year. There is much work to be done, and I am hopeful we can work collaboratively together. I have been working on building connections with incoming board members and listening to many voices and perspectives in our community, and I will continue to do so. Regardless of whether we appoint someone now or sometime next year, it's important that our county has a strong permanent administrator. Besides meeting the job requirements, traits I hope all commissioners would look for is someone of high integrity, honesty, a good track record, someone who is humble, a hard worker, an encourager, someone who possesses excellent communication skills and is impartial.
I'd also like to recognize and thank all the staff members who have been involved throughout this process in finding our next permanent county administrator. Many hours have been invested by you, and we want to thank you for your time, especially sitting through interviews and which went for several hours. And more information will be shared as it is available. Right, with that, we have reached the end of our meeting, and seeing as there's no more business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.